Hi, everyone. Today I have with me writer, director, and producer Jane Clark. Hi, Jane. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Michelle.
Oh, you are like one of the people that I love finding because I saw you on LinkedIn, and I looked at your stuff, and I was like, oh, she's going to be interesting. I really want to chat with her. And then I start watching your stuff, and it makes me cry. Everything just makes me cry, and I'm like, oh, my God, she's a genius. I found it genius. I am so happy. Your stuff is crazy good. And I was, before we got started, I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to discuss first? So I thought, all right, let's start with your shorts. Okay, because if I start with your other ones, I'm gonna get too off track. So, and it'll never go back. So I was like, all right, we'll start with the short ones, and then we'll move on. But before we even get started on your work, like I wanted to know more about you because I can't find out a lot about you and your path to what you're doing. So why don't you just give me a little brief, how you got here?
Well, I actually. I started as a painter. I moved to New York, and I was painting and, and working, obviously. But that's not something I could do full time, and I was kind of bored. So I took an acting class, and I got hooked on acting. So then I started thinking, well, I'll be an actor, and then I will make money, and then I'll be able to paint, which I don't know where that came from, because that was like probably the stupidest thing I could have thought. But, of course, I was, 19.
Right.
20. That's where your brain goes. But, and I came out to Los Angeles because, of course, if you want to do film and television, you sort of, at that time you had to be there. There's a lot of stuff going on the East Coast now, but at the time you sort of had to be in L.A., so I came out here and, had some luck, did some independent films. I had a little reoccurring role in Chicago Hope, which I got pretty quickly. But, you come to find out when you do those small roles on TV shows, it's not as exciting as it would seem because you're really running in, you're throwing your lines out, you're there for a day or 2 days, and you spend most of the time waiting, And there's no challenge as a creative person. You're just there to, I was a nurse, so I was there to, doctor your one-ended OR stat, kind of thing. And and that was frustrating. And then I did all these independent films, but they were first-time directors. That's always risky. They just never went anywhere, and they never really, most of them didn't turn out as well as I thought they could have. That was really disappointing. So I started writing because I thought I would write myself a role, and then I'd find a way to get it made, and, I'd have this great lead role in this great film. And again, that was like doesn't work that way. But I wrote a script that got some traction, and what I learned was that nobody really wanted me in one of the lead roles because I couldn't sell the movie, but I could produce. So I thought, well, maybe I will come on as a producer. I'll take a smaller role, and I hired a director to work on the film with me, and it was someone I liked and I'd worked with as an actor, so I trusted her. But I found that as we were talking about the script, that I had very clear ideas about how I would shoot the film, how I saw it, and I started thinking maybe I didn't want to give that script up to somebody else to direct. So I applied to the Sundance Producers Conference to try to learn how to get better connected and to understand the producing world a little bit better. And I got in, which was amazing. And then one thing led to another, and I got to a point where I thought, you know what, I should just make a short and see if I even like it. I'm building towards this career, and I don't even know what it is. So my husband had written a short about our dog being stolen called Valdan. And, he was like, honey, if you want to try it, why don't we just, pool our money? My dad gave me a little money, and let's just make it. And I had a friend who had been making shorts, and I asked him to help. He's actually a cousin. And anyway, made my first short film and found out that I really loved the process of actually creating the entire story as opposed to being a piece of the story. And I had starred in that short film only because the actress that I had hired had a family emergency right before we were supposed to shoot. And since it was really, I was playing myself, I thought I could do it. But the other thing I learned was that I didn't really want to mix it, that it was really hard to be, to have the commitment as a director and a producer and also have to pile on the actor on top of it. And I didn't think it was fair to the other actors in the film to have half my attention split when acting is all about reacting and being present for each other, you can't really do that if what you're doing also at the same time is judging the other person's work to be able to tell them where they might tweak here or change something there. So I thought, I really think I want to try this further. The first short turned out really cute. It had production value issues, and it wasn't a perfect thing, but considering I had no background as a filmmaker, I was pretty pleased with it, and I certainly loved the process. So I thought about making a bunch of shorts, because each one's supposed to teach me something different. And I was just trying to educate myself and give myself my own little film school, leading up to the first feature that I produced for a friend, and then my films.
And isn't it fun kind of to do it that way? I mean, I feel like when you're talking about it, like I feel like you're talking about me too. Like I'm pretty much a control freak about a lot of things that I'm like, no, I don't want to give that up. No, I want to do this part. No, I think I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, but the thing is that you get to the point where you realize you really shouldn't be doing it all yourself, and you can't do it all yourself.
Right.
And then you have to figure out how, it's a real balance to like, okay, yes, I wanted to control the story, I wanted to understand, and I wanted to know, because I had seen too many films that I was in as an actor end up in a way that was clear that they could have been better if somebody had known what they were doing on the other side of the camera. And that was a really frustrating thing for me, because as an actor, you're giving everything you have emotionally to the project and to the role. But when you get in it and you start, what I learned as a filmmaker is that you have to be confident that you know what you do know, but be willing to not know things that you don't, and ask to be explained to you. Ask for somebody who knows better to help, and to trust your collaborators, because the people that come on with you, what you call your key crew, so your production designer, your makeup artist, your costumer, your sound guy, all of these people are, and your DP, obviously, they're experts at what they do, and they're zoned in on their one particular field. And I can't possibly know as much of everything that they know. Does that make sense? I can know what I need and what I want, and I can know how to ask for it, but I can't tell each of them how to do their job. And what they bring to the table is going to enhance anything that, the baseline that we start at is going to be enhanced by each person's creativity. So part of the joy of it is realizing that while I have to be the puppet master, and I enjoy being the puppet master has to also let each person have the freedom to be great in what they do, because I'll benefit from it if I do. And if I don't, it won't be as good as it could be, because I don't know enough. I just never will know enough, So it's kind of a journey.
Right. And when I was watching Doggone, I didn't know that was you until the end. So for everybody who wants to see you, they need to watch a short, because you're right there, and they can watch you act, and and that is, that one was so cool. And I got to learn where the name McQueen came from, because that was going to be one of my questions. And of course, so that was from your dog, and you named your production company, and you have two. It's like Film McQueen and then McQueen Productions, correct?
No, it's just Film McQueen. It's just that it shows.
Oh, okay.
People don't seem to get the Film McQueen part of it sometimes, but yeah, Film McQueen.
Well, it was a good story, and I have a puppy, so I totally understand.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's hard. Dogs are like pretty much everybody has an animal of some sort, and dogs are so popular that it's a universal story.
Yes, they understand the passion and the like what happens. I think everybody can relate to that. How they would react from it. Okay, so which one was your second short?
Host of Daffodils was my second short. That was based on a true story. Go ahead. I was going to say, when my father had a stroke, and it was a very, just the process of going through that, and dealing with, family that, I was a little bit estranged from, and, it was an experience with my brother that could have split us apart. Could have been like the nail in the coffin, and it became the thing that bound us together. And it just was an incredible experience have to go through. Obviously, loss of any sort is profound.
Mm-hmm.
But while I was, the one thing that I I sometimes feel weird about, but I sometimes have, and I'll be in the process of having an experience, and I'll think, oh, this could be an interesting movie. And I was in the ICU with my dad, and he had a stroke in the area of the brain that controls all your primitive functions.
Mm-hmm.
So your ability to wake, your ability to swallow, those kinds of things. And so he was kind of in and out of consciousness, and everybody was treating him like he wasn't aware. They were talking
mm-hmm.
about him in front of him, and I was sitting there thinking, but I know he hears you. Just because he can't say it, I'm absolutely sure he hears you. Why are we treating him like he's not there? And I started thinking about that idea of what it would be like to be trapped in this body where you couldn't move, but you could hear and see, and nobody would really treating you as if you were still yourself, And so he eventually passed away, and then a little over a year later, I decided I was going to tell that story.
Oh, and I love the way you shot that. I mean, at first, I have to say, like the first couple of minutes, I was confused. I was like, wait a second, where are they? I almost thought you were doing it like from behind his bed or something, like from a weird, and I was like, oh, and then because of the way you had it blacked out and then up, and the way you were kind of going up, and I was like, it's from the death. I was like, oh, that's so cool, because I've also been through my parents' death, and I felt the same thing. There were times, there were moments that, they were there but weren't there, and people were talking around them as if they weren't there. And, so when I figured out what you did, I was like, oh, that is so cool. What a great, you're such a great director. Like, it could have been, because the story, not that it wasn't a good story in itself, but it just intensified for a short, especially, where you only have, 20 minutes or maybe half an hour to really make an impact. And it was so amazing. So I was like, right, when I watched that, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So I'm moving along, I'm moving along your short. So, okay, and I love I love the title. I love how that tied in, with his favorite poem, and that was beautiful. Okay, so next. So you've got 2 now done, and do you do another one? You do another short before you move on, or?
Yeah, I mean, so my intention was always to sort of just keep making shorts while I learned how to make film. So like the first one was just kind of like we had the script, and it was crazy free-for-all. I mean, doggone I think we had like 20-something, 26 locations or something. I mean, it was just ridiculous what we thought we could accomplish on $5,000, But,
right, right.
But, you learn. So you go, okay, I got through that. Next time I might not want that many locations, and I definitely need more money for post-production because that's more important than I gave it weight for. And then the second one I shot on a soundstage because I needed flyaway wall. I needed to be able to drop the walls out so that I could move the jib arm around it. So it was like the head of the father was the camera on the jib arm, and we were moving it, in and out that way. So I needed the walls gone, and I also wanted to see what it was like to work on a stage. And then the next film I made was Carrie's Choice, and Carrie's Choice was partially period piece, and I used that was based on a true story, but it's a woman's right to choose, and my goal was to make it even-handed, to not try to preach to anybody, but just tell the story in a way that might bring people to talk about the issue. And the thing that I tackled on that one was music rights and composition. So I had never worked with a composer before, and I thought that was going to be important before I make a feature film. So I did that, and then I also tackled music rights, which is a really difficult process for any kind of filmmaking or television. The process of trying to get the rights from the publishing companies and where they're all attached. And so I went through that, and that was Carrie's Choice.
And me as the viewer, like, I didn't know that, but that's the first thing I recognized about it was the soundtrack.
The music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, wow, listen to that soundtrack. That sounds amazing. And and it wasn't overbearing, and it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, I thought it was perfectly done the way you did that. So I love that one. And the actors were amazing in Carrie's Choice also. Like, the acting was really, really good. So that was okay. So then now you're like, so now you're gaining. I didn't even know which order you did these in. So I love hearing, like what led you from from the one to the next.
Yeah.
So, okay. So go ahead.
So
then you get that done.
After that, there's two shorts that are like in my collection, and I did one right after that. We were out of money. Basically, my husband was like, we can't spend any more money on short films. That I was really craving to do something, and my mom was going through, she had Alzheimer's, and so I wrote this 10-minute stream of consciousness sort of script. It was just a 10-minute real-time with a daughter with her mother with Alzheimer's, and I did act in that one, and I got the old lady from Host of Daffodils, Edith Fields. I brought her back to play my mom, and that one we did with no money. I asked, we had my Steadicam guy came over with his equipment, and my friend John came and played a role, and I think I had one other person there. We were doing it all ourselves. We spent no money except I rented 2 lobs for sound, and the guy only had 2, and we had 3 characters, so that turned into a nightmare. But I was putting the lob and the plant between us, and anyway, it just didn't work very well. But that was my experiment on what could I make with no money, not needing anything except a couple of people and a script and the actors. And that turned out, I really like it. What I learned from that was that, again, it reinforced the idea that I shouldn't be acting in my movies because I missed things I would have caught otherwise in terms of edit, stuff that I needed for cutting take to take and through the process of getting into the story. And again, it goes back to post, just reinforce the idea that you can't really just wing it without, sound is incredibly important. So I probably could have spent money to get this sound fixed afterwards, but this was supposed to be a no-money project. But that went around, played a couple festivals anyway, because the content was, the story was identifiable. A lot of people have gone through Parkinson's or dementia with their grandparents or their parents, and it's, such a traumatic experience trying to stay sane while you grapple with their descent,
Right.
But it still did okay, but I don't show that one just because, there were some issues that I would have, that I can notice that I feel are just too noticeable that I really want to put out there. But it was a good experiment. And then I went, then I made The Touch. Then it was The Touch.
Which was amazing.
That was supposed to be, so I was given a script to direct, and we were trying to raise money for it. It was a period lesbian romance, written by this woman, Nicole Kahn, who's a friend of mine. And I wanted to prove that there was a straight audience for a lesbian romance. That if you were telling the story in sort of a universal way, that it could broaden out from the niche. And I had been asked to do a contest where you submitted a script that could be made for $15,000, and it had to be 5 minutes long, and they were awarding the top 5 people the $15,000, and there were 3 festivals that were in charge of vetting it, reading the scripts and deciding who to give it to. And one of them was the Provincetown Film Festival, and I had played there with Carrie's Choice. And so I entered. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna write a script and do this, and I'm going to have them fund a short film that proves that there's an audience for a period lesbian romance. So I Googled lesbian women of history, and I found this woman, Renee Vivian, who was a very well-known poet in her time, in the early 1900s, who had a letter-writing affair with a married Islamic woman.
That's crazy.
And I was like, this is great. Yeah, I was like, this is a crazy story. I can't believe. And then I read her poetry, and I was like, oh my God, this woman really was a talent. But this odd romance is so unusual that it seemed like there was a story there. So I wrote it, and then I didn't get in. I didn't win the money, and I thought, well, screw it. I'm just going to make it anyway. And before crowdfunding was even crowdfunding, I got a nonprofit umbrella through Women Make Movies, and I just started, sending letters out and emails and asking people to support the project. And I raised $12,000, and I made it. And I got into Provincetown with it, and I was sitting with the program director. I said, I really couldn't believe you guys, I thought for sure that I had a good shot at it. And she said, oh, Jane, you were at the top of the list for all of us, but none of us thought you could make it for $15,000. Oh, man. Okay, so I made it for 12, and thanks anyway. But it was such a beautiful short, and that short has spiraled me into a bunch of other things. So, it's always a what is meant to be sort of situation.
Right.
And then I followed that up with another short called Misrepresentation, which is on my YouTube channel, which is about which I shot in Cannes. It was also a contest. They gave you a flip camera. If they liked your ideas, they were giving flip cameras out to people, and you had to shoot it in, shoot and edit in 48 hours and turn it in. And you couldn't use, I had no lights, I had no sound. I basically had to go on the street and shoot it, and I used the ambient light from the Rue d'Antibes, which is the shopping street. They leave all their lights blasting in all the windows. It's beautiful. It's lit up with this glow, and oh my God, it's so gorgeous. So I just thought I'll use all the ambient light off of all the store windows and shoot this thing. And it's about a girl a woman who's an action hero, and she's walking home from her premiere in Cannes, and she is being followed by this guy. And she decides to trap him. Instead of letting him scare her, she stops in an alley, and when he catches up to her, she beats the crap out of him, and then she walks away, and somebody comes to rescue him and says, what was that about? He says, I don't know, I just wanted to get an autograph. But it was fun because I got to have an experience shooting a fight scene, which I had never done, which was interesting. And to shoot that fast, sort of on the fly, was, again, a challenge. So I don't know, that was a really interesting experience. And then I ended everything with Beyond Words. That was my last.
And Beyond Words, what I loved about that was the camera, the fade-ins of her, how she really felt. Yeah, her spirit. Yeah, the fade-in of her spirit and how she was really feeling, because we all do that. We all act one way when we want to act another in those situations. Whether we're fighting or hurt or, because you want them to see it, but they can't see it. Oh, that was crazy good. I love that one.
Okay. Yeah, I do too. I love that one a lot. And, that was kind of a lucky thing because I go to Cannes every year, and I was meeting with this woman on a yacht. She had a yacht. And I was like, I went through all my pitch for my feature films, and she was like, hey, how about your shorts? Are you still doing shorts? And I was like, oh, God. I want to do a feature. And I was like, well, I don't want to raise money. And she's like, no, we have the money. And I'm like, oh. She's like, we have $50,000. I was like, oh.
Whoa. Okay.
And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, I don't know. You could pitch me an idea, and I'm going to star in it. And my husband, my boyfriend's going to finance it. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can pass that up. So she was a dancer, and she had given up dancing because she had hurt her knee and couldn't dance professionally any longer. And somehow it made her way she became a lawyer, and then she was looking, she's going to produce film. It was, I guess, the ultimate goal. But she got back into acting because she missed the creative aspect of her life. And she described always feeling like there was a hole in her life where the dancing had been. And I combined that with an idea I had written a feature script about husband and wife who, instead of just saying what they were feeling and putting it on the table, they kept crunching it down, and it made the relationship worse and worse. And this idea, like you were saying, how we don't, sometimes you just don't tell what you're really thinking because you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, or you don't want to rock the boat. You just don't want the relationship to get any rockier or more uncomfortable, or you don't like confrontation or whatever it is, but you hold things inside that could solve issues if you would just say it out loud. And we all do it, but it can be really detrimental to a relationship. And so I was toying with the idea of that and where that would go. And so I put those two things together to tell the story of this woman who was a dancer and gave it all up to have a family, and now was feeling smothered and lost, to her husband's ambitions and her children's needs, and I thought about that idea of, who you are, what the subtext of what you're saying is, or what the inner feeling is, and part of that idea also came from the fact that I have another film that has to do, it's a feature, but it's about a spirit that comes to a girl and basically woos her, becomes, is basically, she's the reincarnation of someone who had passed away, and is not by love, and so the spirit of her lover comes back to her. Anyway, I needed to know how to do compositing. I wanted to understand compositing for that film because I had a lot of, the spirit presence in the room or in the circumstance with the girl. So I wanted to understand how that was done. Even though, getting into a feature film, you'd hire people to do it. I feel like I should at least know the rudiments of anything, because then I can feel confident in that I'm delivering what needs to be delivered for the post people to do their job, and for me to understand how things work. So those three things combined to make Beyond Words. But I love that film. We didn't really take it out to festivals because we didn't have any money left by the time we were done. But I thought it was.
But it did win an award, though, right?
It did. Like, the producer actress, she tried to get it into some festivals for free. We didn't have money for submissions, so we got into I think we played 5. We played a couple that I've played all the time, and a couple that she dug us into. And one of them happened to be in LA, and we won, the best short award. But it wasn't like my other films where I was going to, 25, 30, 35 festivals.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm just trying to think of that. How do you keep up that kind of momentum to take one of your shorts to 35 festivals? Is it, I don't know, is it fun for you or is it exhausting?
Well, it's always fun the first few times, because the only time you really know how you affect an audience is if you sit in the audience with them, like Host of Daffodils, after it's finished, it was a big auditorium, and there was probably about, I don't know, maybe 200 people there. And the film, usually the film wraps, and you're in a festival, people clap, and then they move on to the next movie and the next short. And the film ended, and the credits started rolling, and it was dead silent. I mean, it was dead silent. But you could just feel this weight in the room. And I got up, they broke, because I was the only filmmaker there, they broke for me to do my Q&A right after my movie, and I got up to the front, and everybody was just sitting there. And I was like, oh, my God, either this is really great or this is awful. And then, people started standing up, and one person was like, one of the first people that stood up and said, you had to have noticed the weight in the room when your film ended. And, I just don't even know what to say about how I'm feeling right now. And then you could tell that there were just enough people in that room that could empathize with the situation of that family and what was going on, that it just wasn't one of those films where it finished and you went, oh, hey, yay, clap, clap, clap. It just
right.
But that was a reward for me, because I knew, then I could know for sure how the film was received. And how it was affecting people, and I could understand and believe that I had achieved my goals. And so when you go to festivals, that's what it gives you, particularly when you're a growing filmmaker and you are unsure, you're not as sure of yourself yet. It's a good way to reinforce it. I didn't go to all of them because you can't afford to go to all of them, but there's this idea that the more festivals you have in your belt, the better it appears that your film is done. So it's always good to sort of rack them up. I've come to change my opinion on festivals, as a whole, particularly if it helps or hinders a feature film. But for short makers, it's important, because you need that reinforcement. You need to know that it's working, and it gives you an opportunity to meet other filmmakers that you might not otherwise have. So I have friends, that I made back then at different festivals that are still friends today that are my peers who I, know I can call if I have a question about something or, or just to call up and, cry on someone's shoulder because things have gotten frustrating and I just need to vent, So for all those reasons, festivals are great.
And then doesn't it also lend you to find people who will like what you're doing? Isn't connections also huge, for some producer or somebody somebody who has money and they're like, I want you, to do this film or, to make those kind of connections. Isn't that also what? Yeah.
I mean, to some small degree, honestly, the reality is in this industry there are maybe 5 festivals that count in terms of financing your next film or somebody discovering you. Most festivals don't do that for you. Most festivals are more of, you can say that you played them. If you win awards, that's even better. You meet people, you make friends, and you see your film show. And that's about all that a festival can give you, unless it's like a Sundance or a South by Southwest or Cannes or Berlin or Toronto, that level of festival. There's a second tier that might get somebody interested in you as a director, so maybe an agent will see you if you play AFI or LA Film Festival or maybe Tribeca. But the investors are not necessarily at those festivals.
Oh, okay.
So it's what most people assume, but it's just my experience having done it enough at this point to understand that, the people with money go where there's money to be made, so to speak.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
And the smaller festivals, it's not worth the cost of going for most people from a financial standpoint.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because, well, even to get into them, but I mean, also to travel, I mean, I would assume that kind of cost too.
Yeah, the travel, the expense of just eating and drinking,
right.
while you're there.
Right.
The hotel, everything it adds up, and it's like, what are you getting back from it? You got to, at some point, I know people that go to festival after festival after festival, but I'm like, at some point you have to look at it and go, what is my, what am I getting back from this? Because the cost of it really adds up over a period of time. And, it stops being a profitable experience or worthwhile experience from that point of view.
Right. And, so when you're making these, I mean, how do you support yourself? Because you're, trying to, you're getting money to make the film. But I've heard different stories about how screenwriters and producers and everything, how they have, their day job that they'll go to or night job or whatever they can fit in. Was that your experience? Did you have to keep, or were you getting enough money to live on that you put that in the expense of the movie?
Well, I really wish I was. No, I mean, when I started out, when I was doing the shorts, my husband, was working full time, and I was doing, I did a lot of script doctoring for people.
Oh, okay.
And I had this little business that I ran that I shouldn't probably say this out loud, but I used to get the breakdowns, which is the actor, the casting calls, basically. They're very hard to get, but I used to get them. And then I would send people's pictures out for them to go through and figure out what was right for us. I had 10 clients, and for each client I'd go through the casting calls for each day and then send their picture with a letter to help them try to get auditions. So I had a little business I ran that did that.
That sounds fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was I was doing it for myself anyway. And
right.
It was kind of fun when other people, were able to get auditions and to help other people. And it was good. It was decent money for, a couple of hours in the morning. And then I would audition in the afternoon, because I was still auditioning through a lot of that short process, and or at least for the first few years. And then in the last few years, I've been spending all my days writing scripts contacting people, trying to raise money, and then putting the movies together. And I have not made any money off my movies, and we put some of our inheritance into our features to get them done, which is the sad part of making film. And my husband had a good job for a long time, and has recently moved into the family business, which gives him a little more free time. But we're lucky that way, and that at some point I was able to stop trying to take all these piecemeal jobs to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to just work full time on pushing my career forward. And still it's hard. Yeah, I don't know how people do it who have to work full time. I really don't. I mean, certainly you have to focus on one thing, and whereas I have 6 or 7 projects I'm working right now, somebody else would have to have time for maybe one,
Yeah.
Everything they have into that one.
Yeah, exactly. Especially for what you do for each one of them. But okay, so I get done watching your shorts, and I'm already thinking that you are a crazy genius. Okay, and then I couldn't decide. I'm like, Crazy Bitches or Meth Head? They're both coming up on Amazon, so I'm like, which one do I want to watch first? And then I was like, you know what? I have so many addicts in my family. I'm not going to watch Meth Head because it might just be way too close to home, and bring up stuff. So I turned to Crazy Bitches, and oh my gosh. What a movie. It is so good. I was like, every time I thought I knew what was going to be happening, and then, I don't want to spoil alert for people, but the end is so good. And you wrote that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because, I watch a ton of movies, okay? I read a ton of books. And I always like to think that I know what's happening. Right? And, that I'm like, okay, I kind of think I know how this is going to turn out. But you had me. I mean, I got to it's the last 2 minutes of that movie, and you completely had me. And I just sat there. I was talking to my daughter who lives in Texas, and I was like, oh, my gosh. She's like, what? I'm like, I just finished this movie, and I'm going to be talking to this woman soon, and, oh, my God, she wrote this movie, and it's crazy. I'm like, you have to get it. You have to just watch it because she loves movies, too. I'm like, you have Amazon Prime. Just watch the movie. So it was so good. Of course, at this point, I'm starting to realize that you're using actors, a lot of the same actors. So I was like, are they friends, or do you how does that work? Because they're good. They're great.
Yeah, they're all good. Well, one of the things I think people make a mistake on short films with is that they don't actually focus on the acting and the actors. So I take days and days and days to cast my films, even the short films, because acting is everything. I mean, if you don't have a good actor, your script can be great and it won't matter. You've got to have someone who can bring the words to life. And so I really focus on making sure that the actors are as good as they can be. But when I made Meth Head, so even though I produced a film called Elena Undone, and even with that, I brought the girls that starred in The Touch, I brought them into Elena Undone. And I brought some other friends of mine into that, even though I was the producer, not the director, because I also think about building everybody's careers. We all go up together. But when I had done Meth Head, we were looking for what you'd call like a festival cast. And
was Meth Head first?
Yeah, Meth Head was.
Okay. Well, first of all, I am halfway through Meth Head because I did, after I got done with Crazy Bitches, I was like, okay, now I'm ready for Meth Head, even if I know it's going to go in the addict world. I get that, but I just have to see this movie. And I got halfway through it, and then I had that call today that took way longer than it was supposed to. So I will watch the end of it, but okay. I realized that I watched them out of order, but okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's totally okay. The only reason I bring it up is because because of the type of film it was and the content of the film, we thought it was really important to get sort of name-ish people attached. So everybody in Meth Head, for the most part, has a background, right? So Peter Ross was on Sons of Anarchy, and Scott Patterson was on Gilmore Girls for 7 years. I think he was in all the Saw series, and Wilson Cruz has done like 40 films, and Lucas Haas has done like 80. I mean, these are guys that are well respected in the industry. It didn't help me to sell the movie because it was still a dark film, and so when I turned to Crazy Bitches, I was like, you know what? I just want to have fun. That film was so hard to make, and such a painful experience.
Yeah, I
but
can
just want
see that.
to go have a good time. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm just going to write for my friends. I'm going to write roles for all the people I know, and then we're going to make this movie. And so initially, every single role was written for somebody. When we got down to making, when we were ready to make the movie, 4 of my friends, for one reason or another, weren't available, couldn't do it. And so I had, at the last minute, I had to go in and recast 4 of the key actors. So that was scary, because I normally would take much longer to cast that many people. People, but
yeah, it's a large cast.
It was one of
right.
those flukes. I lucked out. I think the right people came in, and I knew as soon as I saw them and they opened their mouth, I'm like, she's the one, he's the one. And I got really lucky on that. But they all are my friends now, and the ones that I brought in, like, Kathy DeBono is an old friend of mine. She plays Cassie.
Wait, who's the lead girl in that? What's her name?
The blonde? Which one?
Yeah, the blonde. Yeah, the one with the husband.
Oh, Victoria Perfetta. Yeah, she was in Host of Daffodils, Carrie's Choice, Meth Head.
Right. I was going to say she's the one that I recognized first from all the from the others. So okay.
Yeah.
So she's a friend.
Yeah.
Is she a friend of yours?
She's a friend. No, I didn't know her before Host of Daffodils, but once we shot Host of Daffodils, we became friends. And
I know, and she was so good in that.
Yeah, she's really good. She's a very quiet but very truthful actor, and there's a real joy in working with people you already know, because you're not learning them. As a director, my job is to make sure that I am able to give each actor what they need to be the best they can be, and each actor works in their own way and has their own personality. So you can't treat everybody in the same way. You can't give notes in the same way to every single person. You have to understand them and then give them what they need to do their job, which is going to be different than the next person. So the more I know somebody, the more shorthand is involved. So, the guy that plays Gareth is Blake Barris. Blake Barris was in Meth Head.
Right.
So I wrote that role for him. The guy that plays Cronauer was in Meth Head. He's also the story was based on his story. Meth Head is based on his story, and he's an old dear friend. So I wrote that role for him. Cassie, the tall, dark-haired girl, the volleyball player, lesbian.
Yes.
Is Kathy DeBono. She's also a very old and dear friend. David Famero, I hired on Carrie's Choice to play the boyfriend.
Yeah.
But we stayed in touch all these years, so I offered him the role in Crazy Bitches. And all these guys a lot of them are coming with me. So Candace Kane was in Meth Head. I wrote the opening role for her. Like, most of the people go back to Meth Head or Elena Undone, or my shorts, or all of them. And then there's a few new people. But a lot of the same people I'm bringing to the sequel to Crazy Bitches as well. So when I
saw that you're making, right,
yeah.
I saw you're making, so is she going to be in that? Is she going to be in that movie?
Yeah. I mean, so Alice and Minnie, I don't think I give too much away by saying they lived through the first film.
Right. They make it.
They make it. David Famero's character, who's the husband in Crazy Bitches, he obviously lives. So he's coming back. And there's a couple surprises. And then I'm bringing some of the actors who died, I'm bringing them back as new characters. Like American Horror Story does, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
But it was just, like I said, it just had me, the screenwriting. I mean, I loved your screenwriting in that movie. It really stood out, and the way you wove that story, and it's like I didn't see things coming that were coming. And I have to tell you, it's kind of like, have you seen Get Out yet?
I'm dying to see it. I have not seen it yet. No.
Oh my gosh,
it's
kind of. I won't tell you. I won't tell you anything. All I can tell you is that it reminded me of that. So that's a good thing, right? That's a good compliment, because
yeah. Well,
that movie's doing amazing. That's right. You will like it, because I didn't see that coming, and it was the same thing. I just didn't see that ending coming at all. So I was like, that's brilliant, because I walked out of Get Out going, that was brilliant screenwriting. Like, that was just brilliant. And that's what I thought about Crazy Bitches. And Meth Head, it's like, I haven't gotten to the end, so I can't tell you whether I like the ending or. I'm really sorry about that, because I really had every intention of finishing it. Because
no worries.
I'm telling you, I did. Movie. It is a hard movie, and I have to tell you, if it weren't a hard movie, that means it wouldn't be truthful. And when I was sitting there watching some of it this morning, and I was like, you got it dead on, because I lived with addicts, so I understand that mindset and his lines. Like, I was like, I wonder if she dealt with addicts in her life, because that was exactly, I don't know. I don't think that unless you have, I don't know if you actually know, like, how they act, you know?
Yeah, the backstory to that film, and the reason why it was the first film I made, and that it was as draining as it was for me, is that two people in my life were meth addicts. So my brother-in-law passed away from complications of his meth addiction. And I felt complicit, and to some degree, because once we realized that he was really addicted, we took too long trying to figure out what to do about it. And I think to some degree we buried our head in the sand, because it just, it was kind of confounding, because I used to party. I've tried pretty much everything there is to try out there, and the only thing I drew the line at was needles, but I never did heroin, and I never did methamphetamine, and so I thought he was, and I never had an addiction problem really, and so I thought, oh, he's just partying, and
right.
I just didn't give it the weight I should have, and I did not understand what methamphetamine does and the difference between methamphetamine and some of the other drugs that are out there. Not that any of them can't become addictive and can't be extremely dangerous, but I don't know, my husband nor I nor anybody else in the family recognized the depth of the problem until it was too late. And at the same time that Dickie was passing away, struggling with some issues, a friend of mine who had disappeared from my life, my friend John, came back into my life, and he's like, look, I want to tell you why I left abruptly, sort of I'm making amends. I want you to understand why I didn't. So we went out to lunch, and he told me the bookends of his story, how he fell into the drug and how he got out of the drug. And he's like, yeah, I was a meth addict, and this is what happened. And I was like, oh my God, it broke my heart that two people that I love, and it confounded me too that two people I love could have fallen into this thing, because, in all honesty, John and I used to do cocaine together, and neither one of us, we'd party all night, and then the next morning we'd finish it off, but then we wouldn't touch it again for months.
Right.
It was just like a happenstance thing, and so I couldn't understand how, if that didn't affect him, the methamphetamine did. And I also believe that if I had been with him when he was offered it, that I, like him, would have thought, it's kind of like Coke. What's the big deal?
Right.
And there, by the grace of God, it could have been me. And so those things really started mulling around in my head. And Dickie passed away, and we were all trying to grapple with that. And I started thinking that I just really needed to tell this story. Because if I felt like I was educated and I didn't know and I didn't see the signs and I didn't handle it well, what must be happening for other people? I can't be alone in this, So I called my friend John and I said, John, I need your story, and if you share it with me, we'll make this movie, and maybe we'll do some good. And so we sat down for 2 days straight, and I interviewed him as if I didn't know him, and started trying to piece his story together. And when I was finished, I thought, oh, my God, this is so crazy that no one's going to believe it, but I'll be able to say, but it's John's story. I'm not lying, And then I started doing research on the drug and watching documentaries and watching YouTube videos, and I realized that what I thought was extreme, what John's story was extreme, I realized that John's story was the average, and that was the thing that was most, mind-blowing And literally, like, there's a couple things, like the opening scene of the film was based on not only something that John went through, but my next-door neighbor, 3 houses up from me, had been a closeted meth addict, and nobody knew it. He used to binge use.
Mhm.
So he'd go off for like 2 weeks and then come back and go back to his regular job as a lawyer. And then he would go off and binge for another couple of weeks and then get back to life as normal for another few months. And during one of his binges, he picked up a girl on Hollywood Boulevard that she wasn't a runaway. She was in touch with the family, but she was definitely on her own. And he brought her home, and they partied for, 3 or 4 days. And on the 4th day, they were so screwed up, he pistol whipped her, and then he tied her to a chair, and then he played Russian roulette on her, and he shot her, and she died. And then he tossed her body off the interstate, off of an overpass. And but his tenant had heard the gun go off and came upstairs and saw the whole thing. And he said, "If you tell anybody, I'll kill you. Now help me clean the body up." So this poor, 19-year-old kid or whatever it was, didn't know what to do. He helped him clean get rid of the body and then clean the thing. And then he went to 3 or 4 days later, he called his mom in tears. He was like, "I don't know what to do. I'm scared for my life." And his mother said, "Go right to the police station." And that's how they found out what had happened. But this was a lawyer. This was like a really, and a nice guy. Like, it's just, so, I mean, he's a story after story. Once I started writing the script, the stories just started flowing in. And, I had my own experience with Dickie and my own experience as a family member and what that felt like and the confusion of that. And then I took John's story as the root, and I put Dickie's story into it and my story into it. And so there's nothing in that, and there's nothing in Method that didn't happen to John or somebody I know.
Yeah, and it's the thing, like I was saying, like, I know nothing about meth. Nothing. It never crossed my path, I was asking my daughter, I'm like, "Do you know anything about meth?" She's like, "I don't know. Do they use a spoon?" I'm like, "Oh my God, forget it." Like, but it's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing. But, I've heard, of course, you hear on TV and, how horrible of a drug it is. But I have to tell you, my mom was an alcoholic. She died an alcoholic. But it could have been, when I was watching him, she said the same things he said. Like, it didn't matter. And I think that's why the film was so awesome, was that it doesn't matter, even with alcohol. Like, so that's, that's a drug that you wouldn't think, not that people don't know that people die from alcoholism, but she was so far gone in her alcoholism that the same lines that you had coming out of his mouth could have came out of her mouth and did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so,
addicts are addicts. Their behavior is the same. What they do to continue to be able to use the lying to themselves, the lying to the people around them. It's all the same.
And I was the same thing. I was like you. I was so not aware of her alcoholism. And, a couple of times when she would be with me, she'd say, "Well, I need a bottle of vodka," and I'd go get her one. And then the next day she's like, "Oh, I broke it and it spilled. Can you go get me another one?" And then I never asked, like, "What? It did what?" Like, it broke. Like, I just was like, "Oh, that's weird." And then I'd go get her. Like, I was just so unaware of what was going on. So I get that. And it was, so I'm sure, the reception that you got from that, I'm sure was incredible because it really hit it. I thought that he was good. First of all, he was amazing as an actor. I mean, he was so good. Everybody was good in that film too. So what happened? What did you get from that film? Like, did anything happen for you? Did it win any, major awards?
This is the trajectory of this film in getting it made was kind of a miracle, and then the downfall after it was over was really hard to take. But we missed getting into Sundance by a hair. We were down to the last day of decision making, and they decided to pass. And then each significant festival would call me and say, "This is such a good film. It should be seen. We're not going to program it." To the to the point where I was on the last one, I was just like, the guy calls me and he said, "Oh, this is such a good film," and I was like, "Yeah, but." I had heard it so often, and those festivals, any one of them, if any one of them had taken it, the life of this film would have been different.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard. It's such a hard film to watch. It's a dark film to watch. It's not. It has moments of joy. It has moments of upbeat. It's not like you're in the mud through the whole thing. But it definitely, there's no way, if you've ever had addiction in your family, that this film isn't going to affect you or a loved one or whatever. And so it needed, from a selling point of view, it needed one of those big festivals to pick it up.
Yeah.
To give it the national and international presence that it needed and to sort of validate it. When that didn't happen, we started taking it out to smaller festivals. And then it took off. And we won 12 awards and, best actor, best writer, best director, best blah, 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 blah.
Right.
All that was great from a reassurance point of view. And we had reviewers saying, best film of Lucas Haas's career. It's an Oscar nomination-worthy performance. I had all these quotes. But without any money behind it, we had no ability to push the film.
Yeah, no able to market it the way it needed to be. Yeah, exactly.
And you don't realize that as a filmmaker. You're like, I'm going to make a great film, and then someone's going to buy it, and then they're going to take it out. But in this changing world, this changing distribution world, and we were right at the cusp at a point where if we had been a year or two earlier, we might have been okay. And even the following year became the year of dark movies. We might have high on that, but the year we came out was a year that the festivals were programming light and airy and happy stuff, and because the economy was bad and people were dispirited, and it all affects the way a film sells. But because we had to then figure out what to do with it on our own, there was no money to do anything. And by the time we found a distributor that was willing to take a chance on it, we had spent money on the festivals. We thought the festivals would help. We thought the awards would help. And in the end, you can't put your laurels up on iTunes. They don't, that's not allowed. You just have to put your blurb, and that's what catches people's attention. And even on my DVD case, my distributor wasn't even going to put the winning laurels on there. And I was like, but we won all these awards. Doesn't anybody care? And he's like, well, not really. But, all right, pick 6. I was like, oh, God. So all of the money that we put towards festivals, we really should have been putting toward saving for the marketing and the release of the film, but we didn't know that. So by the time it came out, I was premiering Crazy Bitches at its first festival the week that Meth had released. And all our attention had focused on the Crazy Bitches because I had assumed that the distributor would do its job and somehow people would find it, and that just wasn't the case. So it kind of came out with a little bit of a whimper, and every now and then someone contacts me and tells me that they saw it and it affected them, and we know for a fact it has saved at least 3 lives, 3 people that went into rehab after seeing the movie. So that is
something,
Yeah, it really is. But
I'm looking at your reviews on Amazon are just amazing. You're getting it has amazing reviews on it.
Yeah, look, you either hate it because it touches too close to home, or you love it because it touches too close to home.
It's close to home. Yes, exactly.
But it's just out there. I have a plan in my mind that someday I may. When we get the rights back, I may reintroduce it as a brand new film. Not lying about it, but just saying, just putting a little marketing money behind it and re-releasing it in a way. Because if you haven't seen it, then it's a new, right? If you don't know about it.
Absolutely, and I think it's important. I don't know anybody who can't relate to somebody that they knew either in their family or a friend that wasn't an addict of some sort. So that's why I think that it makes you real, when I watched this and what I was thinking as I was watching this was oh, okay, so I'm not the only, I was the sister, that didn't know, but it was oh, okay, so I did, it's not, it's because it was too close. It was her brother. It was my mom. When it's close like that, you don't know, but you kick yourself when they die. You're like, why didn't what did I not do? But then you realize, okay, I'm that person, and and in this movie, there's somebody of everything. You know, there's every person. So somebody's going to relate to these people,
right.
and you know.
And that's something I thought a lot about when I was writing it too, because you know, it would be easy because John's gay, and it's prevalent in the gay community. It's not as bad of a problem as it was a number of years ago, but country-wise, we had a real problem back in like 2005, 2006 when they finally passed the ephedrine law. Like they have to buy Sudafed over the counter now. You know, I mean, you have to go up and ask for it. You have to sign for it and all that because of the methamphetamines made with that. And they thought they fixed the problem, and now in the last few years they've seen an uptick in usage again. But when I was writing it, I wanted to make sure that nobody could come back and go, well, it's a gay film and it's a gay problem, because it's not a gay film. It's not a gay film. It's not a gay problem. So when John was using, there were two people in his life. There was the guy he was in love with, which is Blake's character, and then there was the more like mother figure, who was a straight woman with a child. And I interviewed Blake's character is based on Dickie, and I interviewed the girl that John used to hang out with, who was this more motherly figure and very protective of the boys. And, you know, I don't know if she's sober, I don't know what's going on in her life right now, but she was very honest and had a lot of good stories to tell me as well, and I incorporated her story into the film. And at some point I had people giving me advice and saying that I should focus just on Lucas's character. But for me, I wanted to say this is a universal problem, and all these people represent somebody that somebody can identify with.
Right, exactly.
Whether it's a mother whose child was taken away by the state, or the young boy who has sex with guys just to get high, which happens a lot even though he's straight, or the gay guy, or the sister who just can't quite get her head around it and doesn't understand, or the father who loves his son but wishes he made safer choices for his life, or, you know, like all these people represent somebody that I know, and therefore I think make the film highly identifiable to everybody. I mean, the father-son relationship was really interesting because I had two friends that are reviewers, and they work for big publications, and neither one could review the film publicly because it wasn't released in theaters. But I called them after a private screening and asked each one what they thought. And one of them said, I loved so much of it, but I think at the end you should have gone darker and you should have made us sit with it longer. You just could have made it a little more arty. Like he had this more arty idea of this really painful experience of the end of the movie. And I talked to the other guy, and the other guy's like talking about the father-son situation, and he goes, I think you went too far at the end of the movie. I think you should have, it was like one downfall too many, and then he started talking about the father-son story, and he got choked up, and he couldn't talk for a second. He was like, excuse me, I'm so sorry, and he had to sit there for a minute and collect himself because he's a straight man with children, but that father and son relationship really resonated. So I feel like I was able to make it a universal story, which was incredibly important to me, so that so it wasn't limited. The story wasn't limited.
Yeah.
I think I accomplished that. Yeah.
Yeah. So having accomplished these two, like so now you're going to do Crazier Bitches, and you said you have like a bunch of them. You have a bunch of other stuff in the works too, correct?
Yeah. Well, you never know which one you're going to get funded, so I sort of feel like I have to kind of throw the spaghetti at the wall. But Crazy Bitches 2 is, I'm hoping to shoot this spring, and we're ponying together the money. We're looking for investors, and I've done some, crowdfunding, and we've got some trades and stuff. So we're trying really hard to get that shot in the next few months. And then I have a project I wrote with Guinevere Turner, who's a friend of mine. She's going to star. I'm going to direct. She co-wrote American Psycho. So, I'm using a little bit of her devil brain. And we wrote a script called Don't Come Over, which is a psychological horror thriller, which is subtitled in my humorous mind, No, Seriously Don't. Because everybody keeps telling people not to come over, and they come over anyway. They have to die. for various reasons. And so we're working on that, and that's that's an experiment in honing down, because I have a tendency to write big movies that have, both my films have large casts. Even my short films had pretty big casts, locations, the whole nine yards. So when I wrote Don't Come Over, it was one house. There's 5 characters. Most of it centers around one person, and it's like a super streamlined film. So that's my experiment in that area. And then I have a western, period western, that's a little more money, and we're looking for financing on that. About a bounty hunter, female bounty hunter, who chases a gang of bad guys across the West, and who have stolen a bunch of gold. And there's a love story wrapped in there, and there's a secret that comes out towards the end. But so that's going to be fun when I get the money for that. That'll be fun to shoot. And then I have someone sitting up in Paris that has a really strong French cast, and we're just looking for the 2 American leads. And that is a sort of a buddy comedy. It's like Lethal Weapon, but it's got a gay guy and a lesbian as the leads.
Oh, nice.
Set in a drag club, so somebody's killing a bunch of drag queens, and the cops can't get them to trust the drag world to trust them, so they send a gay guy and a lesbian in to infiltrate and try to figure out who's been killing all these drag queens. So it's it's funny. It's funny.
Right.
It's a little more like Crazy Bitches along those lines, but with a little more darkness to it, a little more like Lethal Weapon. Like it should feel like you're really chasing a serial killer. And I got a period piece about a famous painter that someone else is writing, and I feel like there's more, but I can't remember. I'm writing a script for a producer in Scotland. It's a love story.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I hope you come back and talk with me the next time you have, anything going on, because I love your stuff. I'm so happy that I got to know you and got to know your work, because it truly is, like, it's meaningful and entertaining, and it's really, really good. And I'm so happy I found you.
Oh, thanks, and likewise. Well, hopefully I'll, if we get the money for Grady 2, I will be releasing in November. That's the goal. So
well, that's great.
Again real soon.
Yeah, because I will share share any of your links on all my social media, and I'll be sharing all these links so people can find them, and I'd be happy to do that for you in whatever way I can help you. So you just let me know.
Thank you.
Yes.
I will.
And all right. Well, it was great talking to you. Thank you so much, Jane.
My pleasure.